What is going on? This is Michael Hacker with the Hacker Outdoors podcast, doing that live intro today for you all. On today's show, I am solo for the time being. Brian will be joining shortly, and Joey is preparing for some season fishing, it looks like, apparently. So he is not going to be joining us unless we go a little bit past 7:30 tonight. So of course this airs on Fridays. We had a little bit of technical difficulties earlier this week. I'll say that on a personal level. Was unable to record for a Tuesday release, but we are here. All is well, and we're going to jump right in. So big update from the Division of Fish and Wildlife came through today. Fishing is prohibited on stocked waters from March 15th to March 31st. That's a little bit preseason stocking going on for those of you that are trout fishermen out there. And just like last year, due to the ongoing pandemic, the preseason closure will begin 1 week early. So that's the 15th once again. TCAs, catch and release zones, and holdover trout lakes and the 6 trout stocked waters typically open during the preseason will remain open for catch and release trout only during that period of time. All trout stock waters will open for catch and release beginning April 1st through the 9th. And then of course it closes at midnight on the 10th and will open on the 10th in the morning for, of course, your wild and crazy opening day there. So definitely good. That is an 8 a.m. open on that date on the 10th. So pretty exciting stuff going on. Like to see that they've kind of shaken it up a little bit. Brian and I had talked a little bit about trout fishing and how I kind of wish that they would do something a little bit differently here. We have, if you go to the njfishandwildlife.com's website, they have literally everything you could possibly ever want to know regarding what's being stocked, where and when. They were pretty good on social media last year, posting that stuff on there. Oh, look, it looks like Brian Hacker has entered the waiting room. So let's go ahead and jump on in. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you.
Haven't seen you in a few. So we were going over, Joey is a little late. He is probably not going to be joining us because he is prepping for some sort of tournament or something. So we'll jump from there. I did get an email from the Division of Fish and Wildlife that, you know, they are bumping up the stalking and the water closures. So looks like they're doing what they did last year where, you know, season technically opens on the 1st. That'll be catch and release only until the 10th. And then the 10th will be the official opening day. Always a plethora of great information, like I was saying, on njfishandwildlife.com. That's where I go for kind of trying to figure out what my game plan is for trout season, right? Or really any fishing.
Yeah, they give you a ton of information on there. People don't realize.
Anything you would possibly want to know when people say, Michael, where do you find places to go fish? It's usually I start on the New Jersey Fish and Wildlife website.
Yeah, it's for anything though. Like you just do a little research and the information's out there. It's just kind of funny, but you know, people don't like to chase. They like to just be handed stuff.
Yeah, we've talked about that, right? Like it's
yeah,
it's an issue for sure. Yeah.
Instant gratification.
I got our nephew, my godson, a pair of waders for his birthday. He was super excited. He texts me. He's like, because I told him that it was a striped bass opening day on the 1st, and he goes, can we go striped bass fishing? I'm like, well, you're in quarantine, buddy, but maybe when you're done there, we'll get you out. But him and Jimmy are super excited. Our other nephew.
Yeah.
Can't wait to get out there, man. I was looking at some pictures, and they definitely do have, you know, some guys catching some striped bass, mostly backwater stuff, but still some beauties. I follow a bunch of hashtags on Instagram, and then of course on the fishing groups on Facebook. There's been a lot out there.
Yeah, definitely worth chasing after this year for sure.
You gonna try and make your way out there?
I would like to. Let's see how much time works out, but you know, every time I get a weekend, I always look at for surf first. right now, until trout starts, and then I'll start thinking about trout. But yeah, I would definitely like to get out there and catch some stripe or some big fish. It'd be fun.
Well, I always, you know, regulations for fishing always kind of confuse the ever living heck out of me, right? And always go on the state website to try and figure out a little bit by what it is, what they mean, right? So I think, for 2021 here, it says there's going to be 500,000 trout will be distributed in 4 weeks during the preseason. That's a ton, a ton of them. They are not doing any bonus broadstock lakes. Broadstocks will be distributed throughout the state. They do not say anything out regarding that. But you can go on New Jersey Fish and Wildlife, like I said, and we'll link to it here. They have a PDF with literally everything you want to know about trout fishing in the state, and what those closures look like. So the closures themselves don't actually, mean anything for every body of water. So definitely before you head out, take a look. Of course, you still have a few days here. You can get out on any water you want and do some trout fishing before that kind of closeout date. 15th, man, coming up. I can't believe it.
Crazy. It came quick this year.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's going on with you, man? It's been, like I said, a hot minute.
Yeah, just truck along over here. Just keeping on. I've been watching a lot of kind of YouTube. We'll call them YouTube how-tos. Funny enough, after our podcast is obviously on YouTube, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners listen on there. You kind of get directed to certain types of videos after you follow or you view one of our YouTube cases. So I've been having a pretty good time on my free time watching some of the fishing stuff that's come in response to our videos and our podcast. There's just so much information out there, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying before with people wanting to be handed things versus going to get things. Well, you could literally learn how to go get it yourself, which is pretty much handing it to you, by watching some YouTube videos of how to do things. Let's say just catch trout. All right, what are some techniques to catch trout? There is literally hundreds of Orvis directed trout fishing how-to videos, and they're
great.
Fantastic.
They're absolutely great.
I unknowingly used one of the techniques that was in one of the videos, and I was like, oh, that's what they call that. And I forget what it was, but it's interesting because people could jump into trout fishing, pretty green without having any real knowledge of how to do it, and catch fish just by watching those YouTube videos. 100%. I mean, that goes with anything, but just fishing in specifically, because you teach a man to fish, and the old saying goes, it's. Yeah. I wish more people would use it, the resource. That's one of our, our resources here to kind of learn how to do stuff with the outdoors.
Yeah, and I was reading an article earlier, and it was like you. I am, we'll say, a consumer of information and try and learn as much as I can through other people. Right now, I was telling you, for those of you who don't know, one of the big projects I did this weekend was laying some stonework in my entryway, and a friend of mine goes, "I didn't know you knew how to do that." I said, he's like, "If I had known that, I would have had you help me. I wouldn't have paid someone." He's like, "I didn't know how to do it. Like, I YouTubed it. I had a buddy of mine, who helped me out for half the day to kind of get me started. And then guess what? I figured it out and made it work."
Mm-hmm.
Like, fishing to me is half of the fun is figuring it out, but that is also 100% of the frustration is trying to figure it out, right? Like,
oh yeah,
you have
100%.
those days on the water and you're really, and specifically trout fishing, right? Like, is one of the most difficult types of fishing I will say that I've ever done is for trout. And that's why I love it so much. You spend so much time finicking with these tiny little flies and nymphs, and you're trying to figure out what the bite is and what's the hatch, and what do I have the right size tippet on, do I need to add weight to it, is it in the right water column, you have all these things going on, and you're whipping a hook back and forth over your head continuously that you you really do have to pay attention. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of crazy, man. Um, but I agree the YouTubes is great for that. I've been watching a lot of guys. I'm a big fan of the Fishaholic.
Oh
If
yeah.
those of you who do not know him, he's a Jersey guy, born and raised. He is presently down south, somewhere in the area that you and I used to go, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a big kayak fisherman. But in his early days, he's got a lot of trout fishing. He's not a big fly fisherman or anything like that, but I just really do enjoy him. And I get a little nuggets of information. Like I always watch him when he does striper fishing, and it's like, what is his tempo? What is his cadence? You know, we know what to throw, but sometimes you don't think, about those little things like we were talking about with Joe the other day. But yeah, I kind of agree with you there. What were you watching and what did you learn?
Uh, so I was watching. It was just a. I forget the guy's name. I'll remember for next week for our next podcast. But it was basically on. Do you remember? So I was self taught. I didn't watch any videos. For our listeners, I when I was in college, I went back to college as an older gentleman, if you want to say that. And
You
I
could call
was
yourself an older gentleman.
yes, and I was fishing at a pretty urban, actually very urban stretch of river, pretty consistently for
We were
smallmouth
talking
bass.
we were talking
Yeah.
about it last one, right? Yeah.
hmm And so I went out and got a fly rod, and my first rod was a TFO, and they hooked me up at a local fly shop, and they told me what to use, and they're like, I would start off going for some panfish, sunfish, and smallmouth. You can get one, and that's what I did. But I don't know if you remember when we first started fishing, I was doing this. I forget what the actual technical term for it is, but it's like a double hitch roll cast, and it was just literally just I was just trying to whip it to kind of get it to flop on itself to get it out there.
Yeah.
And that's a real technique. It's just something I thought I did just to kind of get some line out there and drift it past the spot. And the guys legitimately use that in tight streams. And I was like, oh wow, that's actually without being taught that or watching Orvis videos or whatever it was, I just naturally knew. Like, okay, I got to get a heavy fly out there that's already on dead drift right now on the swing, and I want to get it back upstream past, without flopping it right in the riffle that I was aiming for. So how am I going to do it? Okay, I guess I'll just load it and kind of swing it and see if it goes. And it kind of flops, and then you flop it again, and there it is. It's right to the spot where you want, so it can just dead drift past right where you wanted it. And I was doing it for smallmouth in that river, and obviously now I use it for trout too. On the lazy days, like when it gets warmer.
You you mentioned, I mean, I think if you spend enough time doing an activity, right? We'll take fly fishing because that's what we're speaking of.
Hmm.
You start off, I think, because once again, we started not having any kind of instruction, kind of just
Mm-mm.
figured it out on our own, right? I think you figured out what worked just by doing, right? You get into
Yeah.
sticky situations where you can't backcast. Really, a lot of the bodies of water that we fish, you do not have any area to backcast, right? Like
Mm-mm.
you are not doing these big water casts at all. We're doing a lot of roll casts. You're talking about the double haul, right?
Double
Yeah,
haul. Yep. Double haul.
yeah. So learning the double haul and just finding, like, I call it kind of like dirty fly fishing, right? In many respects, because it's not the beautiful casting that people expect, and
No.
it's you have to find the way that actually works for you
Yeah.
in that body of water that you're casting it. But
It's worth mentioning though that without any training, any real know-how, I went out to Montana and I was using just the regular dirty, let's call the dirty Jersey techniques that I was using here in Montana, and I caught fish. And some of the people I was with weren't catching fish, and eventually they did, but so it does work, and you can teach yourself, and you can just make it work. You realize, okay, so fish, they hit on the dead drift when I was doing this. You try that again, see if it works. And it goes with anything with the outdoors. You kind of work with what you got a little bit. Remember one of my good friends in hockey used to say to me, "Look good, play good." So it kind of carries over to this, in my opinion. So it's like if you keep trying and you look good doing it, then it's gonna work eventually. Oh, Nick Cortez.
I liked it. Nick, shout out to Nick, man. Yeah, you figured the way to do it, man. And I think part of our goal of doing this, and also for years of doing an activity, is you bring people into it that would like to learn, right? And it's not, you don't always handhold them to get them there, but they know, like, if people reach out and say, hey Mike, hey Brian, like, I'd like to try this, can you take me fly fishing? And we took a friend of ours, or I should say a friend of mine, a former colleague, and he was like, I want to try it, Hack. He's like, I see you pictures, it looks like you're up in Deliverance country, like, can you take me up there? And we took him up to Sussex County and took him to a stretch of a very popular brook and a river, and he was like, holy cow, like, we're in the middle of nowhere, and we were middle of the season and the only people around. And we caught fish. I think I posted a video of you years ago, to the background music of what was it, Star Wars, right? And of course YouTube flagged it because they don't like that stuff, but who cares? But
the real evil empire.
But that's kind of why we do what we do, is to share the beauty of the world with those of us in the world that don't know how to explore it or how to experience it, right? Speaking of, I just clicked off onto, I was trying to find something for you, and pulled up Facebook for a second there because I wanted to show you this picture of this guy. Well, to tell you about this picture, these guys in Pennsylvania, man, we got to make our way out there. I not a day goes by where these guys aren't posting natural brookies and brownies that are just beautiful.
Yeah,
unbelievably beautiful.
Definitely worth the trip.
Yeah, that's my New York state license is still valid, so I think in order to finish the triumvirate there, the Pennsylvania one is definitely high on the list.
Yeah. Well, I think our friend John would he would get all three. So he'd get New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, and he would fish, all three states through the through the season. But yeah, I think I fished. Did I fish in New York? Yeah, I fished in New York, and I fished with you for trout in Pennsylvania when we were kids. So I've done all three. I've caught fish in all three. Recently, a friend of mine, who I think would be great guest on the podcast, I'm looking to. I think he moved to Connecticut for work, and he's been fishing up there. And he posted a beautiful brown trout he caught, and at just somewhere, another place I never really thought there would be big fishing, but the Northeast is underrated, I think.
Yeah. Well, here you go. I was looking for, while you were talking about Pennsylvania, so Fish for Trout opening day statewide is April 3rd. It's funny how everyone like arbitrarily just chooses a date. Like, this is the date, we're just going to make it open day. Like, no rhyme or reason. It's not because there's breeding isn't happening, or they're not embedding or whatever. But this Pennsylvania's got a pretty good website for learning about fish. So I was reading about guys on the Schuylkill catching some beautiful fish. Schuylkill, if you're unaware, it runs down into Philly. And I was like, what are you talking about? There's a famous actual video of Mike Iaconelli. Those of you who know Mike Iaconelli, or Ike going, he had I believe it was a Discovery Channel show. It was called Fish My City. And he was fishing in Philadelphia, and he caught a catfish in downtown Philly out of a drain pipe. And kind of set me off on this, like, what other kind of freaking fish around there? And these guys are catching some beautiful fish in the Schuylkill, a little bit out of the city, but still like in the Schuylkill itself. but their fishandboat.com has great information. I think it's actually better laid out than New Jersey Fish and Wildlife's website. It's a lot more user friendly. It's got some great maps, which we don't really have on ours. Ours tell us where things are, and you just have to go to the old Googles or whatever map service you use and figure it out. But Pennsylvania has nearly 16,000 miles and counting of wild trout streams and nearly 5,000 miles of stocked trout streams and over 125 stocked lakes. Let that marinate for a second, man. 16,000 miles of wild trout streams.
It's a big state, and I think I really think there's probably more outdoorsmen in Pennsylvania than New Jersey. Even New Jersey's more populated densely. I just think people more, invest into the lifestyle out there than they do here. But I mean, we've driven through the state, me and you, and we've seen a lot of it. And I remember thinking the entire time we point to each other as our normal game goes, I bet I could fish there. And the entire time we were saying it. So.
But I think the problem is, we've touched upon this a couple times in other places, and I think it's true in Pennsylvania, not as much as it is here, or New Jersey isn't as much as it is there, but access issues, right? Like a lot of these wild trout streams in Pennsylvania, because I got a buddy who lives up in the Poconos, and he just moved there, and he goes, I can't find any water to fish. And I said, give me your address. So I typed it in Google, and I said, you have like hundreds of blue water, that I would fish, these little, mountain streams, and you zoom in and it's all on private property. And you're like, you're like, damn, like I go, here's what you do is you go, I had a friend who did this here in Jersey. You go knock on someone's door. It's COVID world. Maybe you don't do it now, but you go knock at someone's door and say, hey, like, can I get permission to fish your property? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And say, it's a guy, whatever, just say, hey, I'll bring you a handle of whiskey every time I come. How's that sound? I'll get you a whiskey. Do you have a favorite kind? Jack Daniels? Do you want me to get you some, Irish whiskey? What do you want? And just do it. Just leave it on his doorstep every time you go, and make sure that you're cleaning up after yourself. You're not leaving the river and the, obviously the property all messed up. I think that's what I would do.
Yeah, that would all take.
I mean, we did that when we were out in PA. Obviously, our family was friends with the neighbor, so he's like, "Yep, we got permission. Just go up there and don't leave it trashed."
Yep. That's literally what he said. I remember him saying, "Don't leave garbage up there." And we said, "Okay."
I thought it was also one of those streams, and when you talk about some of these wild streams, like, what was the name of that movie? Oh my God, with the plane crash in Alaska.
Oh,
not the Wild.
Not the Rock. I forget. It was with I think Anthony Hopkins was the main character, wasn't it?
It was. I'll find it, but there's a scene in it where there was a plane crash in Alaska, and he's got this beautiful watch, and he takes the handle off the watch and uses it as, it's like gold, uses it to fish for, I don't know if it was trout or whatever it was so long ago, and they were biting just the hook itself. But this is literally what this stream was like in Pennsylvania, way out in western PA, where it was just simply, you could drop a piece of metal in this river or this little brook, and you would have a fish probably within a few minutes. I mean, I've never caught so many brook trout in my entire life.
Yeah, that's quite the experience. We've had some fishing adventures. We should do that on this every once in a while. Is just tell story of the different fishing adventures we've had. It'd be fun.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about today. You had a memory pop up on the old iPhone, right? Like they like to show you today's featured photo, and it's not necessarily from today, but it showed our trip to Moscow, Maine. And on the surface, Moscow, Maine, for those of you who are unaware, it's this, literally, if you could look at the state of Maine and look at the map and just simply point right in the middle, That is Moscow, Maine. And it's known because it was a huge radar facility for NORAD, I guess, back in the during the Cold War. And it's got this reservoir, this beautiful reservoir, man-made, right? It's dammed up, that is just in the middle of nowhere. So there's all these cabins alongside of it. And we go up there with some family and spent, was it like 3 days of
Uh,
excruciating rain?
yeah, I think it was 3 days.
Yeah, it was
Um, I,
The Edge,
you
by the
know,
way. That was the name
The
of the
Edge.
movie.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I spent my youth going up there. So every summer I'd spend, either 1 or 2 weeks up there at a time. And we'd fish it. So I know those waters at the back of my hand. But yeah, the time we went, I remember telling you ahead of time because I think you had a little bit of a fishing slump going that summer. And not calling you out on fishing ability or anything like that, but you did. You had a fishing slump going. And you only caught like 1 or 2 fish or something like that. And we what happened next? I told you before we went, I was like, you're gonna catch a fish every cast. And you're like, oh no way. Maybe if I get like 2 or 3 fish in a day, I'll be happy. And sure enough, the first day, you were catching 2 or 3 fish a cast. Every time we went fishing, every cast you catch a fish. You're coming in and you're like 2 or 3 memorable fish every time we went out on the boat, which is unheard of. And it was really good fishing. And I remember being a kid too when we used to go up there, and we would have weeks that they were like that, and then weeks that a little harder to fish because cold fronts or whatever. As the weather kind of dictates a lot of stuff. But up in that section of Maine, there's so much water. There's so many lakes and some real famous rivers too for salmonoid fish. But Moosehead's a stone throw from there, and everyone knows Moosehead. Just smallmouth bass and any other northeast fish you could think of are in there. But we were just catching smallies left and right.
I think it was one of the most memorable fishing trips as far as bass goes that I've ever had. And there were, let's see, 5 of us on the boat, right? And our uncle had this small little fishing boat, and we would go and we were cruising along this lake, and we were probably the only boat on this lake that we saw.
Yeah.
And there's bald eagles flying over our heads. You're hearing the sound of loons playing like from distant coves along this really secluded lake. It really is in the middle of freaking nowhere. And he's like, basically the goal, our uncle is he's like, the goal is we're going to go up to these series of islands and just I'll shut the boat off and we'll just cruise down along the edge of the island, and then we'll kind of go up and then just continue this pattern of just cruising along these islands. And I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting. And number one, we have 5 people on this small little fishing boat. How is this going to work? And number two, like, I had a fishing slump, right? Like I killed a trout accidentally, of course, and it was luckily of size, and I don't like to keep them, but we did eat it. And I got in my own head right at that point. I'm like, damn, I don't want to kill another fish, and I'm not catching anything. And at this point we were still kind of splitting, just on one hand using the fly rods for trout, but we hadn't really moved into using the fly rod on bass at that point. And we had our spinning rods up there, right? We had, I think, 1 spinning rod each and a tackle box full of just really swim baits at that point.
Yeah, I have no problem telling everyone what we use, by the way.
So. you can say it, but we would go up in the first island, and you're just kind of like flabbergasted because this, summertime, and it is freezing cold. It had just stopped raining, and what happens when it stops raining? The bite turns on, right?
Yep.
And it was like we got in this position at the right spot. The sun started to ever so slightly peek behind these clouds, and the mist starts rising off the water, and we start casting along the banks here as we're kind of floating along. And you catch a fish, and I catch a fish, and our cousins catch fishes, and Uncle Ed catches fish, and it's like one after another, and it's like, holy cow, like in one pass, I think we each caught at least two fish each. And he's like, all right, let's go back. And, we just catch and release as we're going. It's like, boom. If I remember correctly, I have it in my my fishing diary somewhere. I think we caught like close to 70 fish in 2 days of fishing up there. We were gone for
Mm-hmm.
3 days because of traveling, 2 days of fishing, 70 fish. And we were supposed to be, mind you, fishing sun up to sundown, and we couldn't do that because it was pouring really torrential downpours. And I mean, you didn't have a dull moment on that trip. It
Mm-mm.
was just incredible. And then we were like, you know what, we got to pack it in because the storm was going to get worse. And it is what
Yeah.
it was. But I think the thing that I used, if I remember correctly, and I can definitely go back and check on this in my fishing diary, but I think we were using Rapalas. That was most of it, and then poppers. And
Yeah.
when you're
White,
catching,
white
go
and
ahead,
green.
white and
White
green,
and green.
yeah. So if you ever make your way up to Moscow, Maine, please do yourself a favor and fish that beautiful body of water up there, and think of Brian and I as you're catching all those beautiful
Smallies.
beautiful smallies, man. It's not called Moscow Lake. It's hold on, it's called
Wyman Lake.
Wyman Lake. Thank you. Yes. And you are so far up into Maine where this is. It's like, what are you, like an hour from the border with Canada?
Yeah, it's so close that I think the main road right there is the main logging road coming into the United States from
That's
Canada.
nuts.
So like all day long, you just see the logging trucks flying by, and yeah, it's fun. Get up there, man. Maine, I love Maine. I tell people all the time, like, just go to Maine if you want a New England feel. Skip over everybody else and go straight to Maine. Then go to the coast, or you can go inland and see all the all the fir trees everywhere and see the beautiful lakes and mountains, and there's nothing like it. You can see moose, you can see anything.
And we missed a moose by like 2 minutes when
Mm-hmm.
we went out to eat that night. I'm a little bit flabbergasted whenever I look at maps. I'm huge into cartography. I love looking at maps. I love feeling them and touching them.
Mm-hmm.
But Google Maps to me are, fantastic. Like, I love seeing aerial footage or, maps
Mm-hmm.
of areas. I like, you zoom out and you do like a 50,000 foot view, and it just like the sheer amount of bodies of water in this area is just
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable. Like, and just to think like how many of them are untouched.
Yeah, people don't want to try to get to it. You have to go through the woods to get there.
Well, and then we finished the day, right? We were getting ready to leave, and we did get a chance to fly fish. Did we
Mm-hmm.
fly fish? Was that moose jaw we fly fish? I'm good. Let's go back.
We fly fished. Which river was that? The Kennebec.
Oh, Kennebec, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, the Kennebec River. It's real famous whitewater rafting, and then real famous for trout fishing too, for fly fishing. But yeah, we're blowing up some spots today, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Well, that was kind of creepy to me, the Kennebec, because it was where we were was right below the dam.
Yeah,
And
it was actually super dangerous, if you want to be completely honest.
well, I think anywhere along that stretch of water would have been dangerous. Even if we were miles downstream, I would have rather have been there, because if they hit the alarm, at least we could have ran to the top, like we would have
Yeah,
been close enough to hear it. But like if we were further downriver, who knows? I mean, yeah.
yeah. I mean, if they opened it, one time we were there and I heard them sound the alarm as we're leaving, and I remember going back to look, and it's a lot of water they let out. Even when they just I don't know if you're bleeding the system to make sure it works or whatever, but the water level will rise right there, right by the bottom of dams, and this is why people need to be careful when they go by dams. I think it rose like 15 or 20 feet, so it was like we weren't that close to the dam, but there's guys that are fishing on rocks, like hopping rocks out to get close to wherever they wanted to cast, and that rock was gone because of water that got covered. So you just have to use common sense. Not that everyone has it, but
Yeah, blown up spots, man. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah, so Maine is one of those places that I would love to spend some more time, right? Like, there are places up there that, some of the more wild brook trout fisheries in the
Hmm.
country. There was a video I was watching on YouTube about a year ago where they went up there and they took a canoe trip, and it's like one of the last wild areas of Maine. They say like untouched, and you just watching it, you're like, number one, like I would not bring my canoe because my canoe weighs entirely way too much. Like if you have to portage it, right?
Hmm.
Um, but they didn't catch any fish, and it was kind of disheartening to see because there was a bit of logging that was going on along there, right? There was some, I think, some sort of fight going on, if I remember correctly, between some corporation trying to do mining along it,
Mm.
and the locals who wanted to preserve it, or the Maine residents who wanted to preserve it, and rightfully so. But it was a kind of a shame to see that they were up there in this famous brook trout fishery in these remote areas, doing a canoe trip and not catching anything. But I think that would be kind of cool to do,
Yeah, it'd be
in my
fun for
opinion.
sure. Definitely.
Yeah. Um, so I think
Solid body.
that's solid, man. It's a little bit of nostalgia there. I do feel a little pensive from time to time, right? Thinking about getting back out there and doing things. It definitely feels like we're, I don't know, 1 year in the 1 year in the dungeon, right? I've been definitely enjoying myself a bit, but trying to get out and see other places is always difficult. Um,
Yeah.
Trying to do the right thing. But our buddies are down at Scoot and Surf today, right?
Hmm.
So I hope that they are shredding it up over there. That's the indoor surf park at the American Dream. Um, I would definitely like to make my way there eventually, and I know you would too.
Absolutely. I told my one friend, I said I want a full report post surf, so I'm sure he'll call me tonight on his way home. Uh, driving home after surfing and tell me all about it. But yeah, they had a 2 hour session, 2 hour block. They didn't tell me what waves they had planned out. But you can choose your menu on which waves you want. From my understanding, like I think the main one is Broadway, maybe, or I forget. But basically, it's like the main A-frame where you can get a couple turns in, and they could just pump those out one after another, no problem. If you want the tube section that you see all the posts about, they could do like one of those a minute. I think they have to let the water reset and everything.
Right.
It's just a giant TPA frame, like 4 foot. You have to, crouch down for us tall folk to get into it, but it still looks so fun. I would love it.
Well, for those
So,
of us who are unaware, right, and I'll throw
mm-hmm.
myself into that bucket there, like when I think of a wave pool, I think like there is a specific wave that happens every time, but that is not the case.
Mm-mm.
And you've kind of educated me that way on a bunch of things. And you actually do get to select. How in depth do you get to select your
Yeah.
waves?
So they come out with a menu, and I think it's only for private sessions. I think if you do a public session, they set it and they forget it. But the private sessions, I think they give you, it might be even a clipboard. I don't know. I have to find out after. But you get to go through and just one by one select how much time you want with and how many waves with each wave. So if you have a 2 hour block, let's say a wave every 15 seconds. They break it down like that basically. So you could say the first hour I want to ride this wave the entire time. For the next half hour after that, I want to do this one, and then the last half hour we want to do 30 waves of the tubing wave or whatever they call it. I forget the name of it, but it's, to me, that's the future. I mean, imagine renting out it's the same technology that goes in the BSR wave park down in Texas in Waco.
Waco. Yeah.
Just a smaller version of it. So basically, they have like air cannons, from my understanding, that push the water, which creates the wave, and that's how they can customize it because it's you can control which ones fire at what time, and imagine being able to rent out that wave and customize it every time you want to ride it. I mean, they do. You see sometimes they'll do like the big airs guys do on on the waves down there, and they do the double backflip or whatever. I think they did. One of the guys, Seth Moniz, did a huge backflip last summer, like a Superman backflip. It's because he requested they were riding the air wave. It wasn't like the typical wave that pumps all day. So the pros can choose what they want, but in a smaller platform like this, it makes sense. So like, let's say if a pro surfer is going to a contest where he knows it's going to be onshore kind of dribble, then he's going to want to be like, all right, so I want to surf the same wave over and over where I can do one air, and there's that wave that's there, the air wave. And you see the guys surfing and they can pump down the line, they hit the one section and do an air. So it's like, it truly is an indoor skate park. So I think you're going to see a lot of kids that are able to afford it. At least they're going to progress really fast because they're going to be able to do the same tricks over and over until they land them. It's gonna be fun.
Dude, that's pretty cool. I obviously I follow them on social. You and I send each other back and forth, and watching these videos from there, it looks really fun. And then when you compare that to the picture you sent me today from Portugal,
Nazire, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, my dyslexia doesn't allow me to pronounce that. I would choose the indoor, skate park or surf park or whatever the heck you want to call it. I would definitely like to see Nazare or whatever it's called, but
for sure,
I'm not going anywhere near that water. And you call me a wimp or whatever you want, but that's not how I want to go, man. That's definitely not how I want to go.
No, thank you.
I've drowned before a couple times, and I have no interest in doing it like in a place where I know that it's pretty much guaranteed that I'm going to drown.
Yeah, you can put your feet up and stand up. That's nice. And you're in a pool, and there's no big fish flying around underneath you.
Yeah,
it's fun. It'll be fun. It's gonna be fun. The future's looking fun for surfing. It's I think things are looking up.
The future is now, old man.
It is. Going gray, so solid.
All right, brother. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. This was the Hacker Outdoors podcast with Michael Hacker and Brian Hacker, and we hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll touch base again next week.
Yeah, get your plans straightened out for next week. I think we're gonna have some really beautiful days early in the week in the 60s, so you should definitely get outdoors, even if you're in your own backyard. Do something, work out outside, do something.
Big fan of that. Get outside and do some kettlebell swings or something.
Oh yeah,
jump rope.
Absolutely.
Don't go for a run though. We don't promote cardio at all.
No. You can do HIIT, but not cardio.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Later.